Welcome to Daily Papers, the podcast where we break down the latest research into bite-sized conversations. Today, we're asking a question that sounds simple, but is incredibly important for our future with AI. When you tell an AI you like something, does it understand why you like it?
Right. It's a huge question. Let's say you have an AI assistant helping you find a financial advisor. You keep choosing advisors who present information in very detailed formal reports. The AI sees this pattern, but what is it learning? Do you value thoroughness and formality, which is a surface level preference? Or do you have a deeper value of, say, financial security, and you believe these formal reports are the best way to get that?
Exactly, because what happens when the AI finds a new advisor who is incredibly sharp and will make you very secure, but they communicate in a really casual, informal way? Will the AI recommend them because it understood your deep value of security, or will it dismiss them because it only learned your shallow preference for formal reports?
This is the exact problem tackled in a new paper from researchers at the University of Michigan and NYU Shanghai. It's called Deep Value Benchmark, measuring whether models generalize deep values or shallow preferences. They've designed a really clever test to figure out what AI is actually paying attention to.
And this test is the core of the paper. They call their method confound, then deconfound. It sounds technical, but the idea is actually pretty intuitive. First, you have to confound the AI, which is a fancy word for confuse or mix up.
In the first stage of their experiment, they show the AI a series of examples of a user's choices. But in these examples, a deep value is always deliberately paired with a shallow preference. For instance, every time the user is given a choice, they pick the option that shows the value of justice and also happens to be written in a formal tone.
So from the AI's point of view, justice and formal tone are the same thing. They always appear together. The AI can't know which one the user really cares about. That's the confounding part.
Then comes the deconfound part, the real test. The researchers break that pattern. They present the AI with a new scenario where it has to make a choice between two new options. Option A represents justice, but it's written in an informal tone. Option B is less about justice, but it's written in that formal tone the AI saw before.
The AI is forced to choose, and its choice tells us everything. If it picks option A, it's generalizing the deep value. It learned that justice was the important thing. If it picks option B, it's generalizing the shallow preference. It just latched on to the writing style.
The researchers created a whole system for this, which they called a Deep Value Benchmark, or DVB. They identified a set of deep values, like justice, honesty, and non-maleficence, which basically means do no harm. And they came up with a list of shallow preferences, like formal versus informal language, or an AI being static and consistent versus adaptive and changing.
They used this benchmark to test 9 different large language models, or LLMs. Think things like GPT-4 or Gemini. For each test, they calculated a score they called the Deep Value Generalization Rate, or DVGR.
The DVGR is basically a percentage. A score of 100% would mean the model always followed the deep value when the signals were split. A score of 0% would mean it always followed the shallow surface level preference. And a score of 50% would mean it was just guessing, like flipping a coin.
Okay, so this is the moment of truth. They run this clever test on all these major AI models. What did they find? What was the average score?
The average DVGR score across all 9 models was 30%.
Wait, 30%? That's not just below 50%, that's significantly worse than random chance. It means the models weren't just confused, they were actively more likely to follow the superficial, shallow pattern than the deep, meaningful value.
It is a shocking result. It suggests that these models are excellent at picking up on surface-level statistical patterns, like writing style, but struggle to infer the deeper, more abstract principles guiding a person's choices.
And there were other fascinating results, too. For example, you might think that bigger, more powerful models would be better at this, but they weren't. The paper found that larger models were actually slightly worse at generalizing deep values than their smaller counterparts.
That completely goes against the bigger is always better narrative we often hear in AI. They also tried a few prompting tricks. In one experiment, they explicitly told the model, When you make your prediction, focus on the user's underlying values, not their shallow preferences.
Okay, so giving it a hint, did that help?
It helped a tiny bit. The score went from 30% to 33%, so still well below chance. But what's really wild is what happened when they tried another technique called chain of thought, where you ask the model to think step by step before giving an answer.
You'd think that would make it more thoughtful and get the right answer.
It made it worse. The score actually went down. The researchers looked into why, and it seems that when the models write out their reasoning, they tend to focus on the most obvious, concrete, surface-level features, the shallow preferences, and that leads them even further astray.
This is all so interesting, but what are the real-world stakes here? Why does this matter beyond a clever experiment?
It matters immensely. We're already using these models as agents to act on our behalf, to summarize documents, to give advice, to interact with the world for us. If they fundamentally misunderstand our intentions, they could make choices that are misaligned with what we truly want, especially in new situations they haven't seen before.
It brings us back to that healthcare assistant example, an AI that learns to recommend doctors from a certain medical school instead of doctors with a compassionate communication style could cause real harm. It learned the wrong pattern.
Exactly. This paper provides a crucial tool, a benchmark for measuring this specific kind of alignment failure, and the results are a pretty clear wake-up call. It shows that just training models on massive amounts of data and human preferences isn't automatically teaching them to understand our deeper values.
The big takeaway seems to be that current AI models are brilliant mimics of surface patterns, but they might not have a deep understanding of the human values behind those patterns. And this paper gives us a clear, interpretable way to measure just how big that gap is.
That's it. It's not saying these models are useless, but it's highlighting a significant risk and a blind spot we need to address as they become more integrated into our lives. We need AI that doesn't just copy what we do, but understands what we mean.